Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance. Now, it's time to welcome a serial entrepreneur, leader, husband, and father who is passionate about sharing the strategies that are helping him excel in life and in business. Here is your host,
Mauricio Garcia.
What's going on, everybody? Mauricio Garcia here, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to come live and share value. And I'm joined today by the great Julian Garcia, as always. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. Let's talk about 2021, man. Obviously, 2020 was quite a year, right, for a lot of people. I know for you personally, since you are in the food industry, basically, where you were affected very heavily. You know, how are people in your, you have a big team in the place where you work. You mentioned previously you have about 50, 60 people and maybe about 1,000 people in the entire company. What do they tell you? I mean, how are they coping with this thing? How are taking what happened in 2020?
It's been a rough year, man. It's been a rough year of uncertainty, relying on, government assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that have taken out loans through their 401k, and now all of a sudden things are still shut down going into 2021. So, things seem to be inching in the right direction of potentially coming back and getting back to work, getting back to doing things. So, I think it'd be important to share some information of how to prevent this in the future.
Yeah.
Many businesses and corporations have their programs, and luckily we have those programs. We have those 401k and whatnot. But there's people that are in the food and beverage industry who,
like the small mom and pop restaurant, right, that don't have those things.
They don't have those things. How do those people, they have to take it upon themselves to invest in their 401k, Roth IRAs, and all that.
Yeah, especially I've worked for the last 2 decades heavily in the Hispanic community because I feel and I know is a very underserved community when it comes to things like health insurance, life insurance, retirement plans. A lot of our people really work in not the big name corporations where you would have all these benefits. And so I can just imagine that, they have to go out and find these programs by themselves when there isn't that much information. And yeah, when it comes to a emergency or a pandemic, if there's not savings, they have to tap into these 401ks, like you said, many of the people that that had to do that. But I think what's important to at least begin the conversation today is how to reinvent yourself moving forward. Because, I was looking at what are the industries that were the most impacted in 2021 due to the pandemic. And of course, and most people know this already, you got the airlines, the leisure, oil and gas, and restaurants were hit the hardest. But there's a lot of industries that did very well and actually did better, like the financial industry. You can see it right here. The property and casualty, multi-lines insurance. In short, the financial industry did very well. And I guess what I'm trying to tell you is not necessarily for you to go and start a career in financial industry, but what change are you going to do? Because this isn't going to be the last pandemic. That's the point. And so have you thought about doing something different? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but it's just ask you a question and maybe some of the conversations you've been having with your friends about what they're going to do to not be impacted the same way next pandemic around.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to money management. And the reality of things is that when you work in the service industry or just a tipped employee in general, if you work for tips,
right,
you're usually getting a smaller amount of per hour pay by the company. For example, if you're a server and you work at any restaurant, you're going to get anywhere from $4 or $5, maybe, you know, but it's not enough. You're getting just a couple bucks, but you're heavily reliant on your tips. That's where your income comes from. And depending on how much you make, and by the end of the day when you're done claiming, a server's check, more times than none, will say 0. Your paycheck, 0. Like, I haven't received a paycheck in years because all my money is in
the gratuity, right?
So
the
I
tips.
come home with all my money in cash. Now I have to decide what do I do with my cash? Do I you know, because at this point, if you work for a corporation, you can tell them take X amount of money and put it into my 401k, or take X amount of money and put it into different spots. As a tipped employee, you don't really have that luxury. So you have to manage your money on your own in most cases. You have to take it upon yourself to say, okay, I'm at X amount, and now I have to take a certain percentage of this and put it towards whether it's a 401k, IRA, and whatnot.
Yeah, so I can see the challenge that people are having, and obviously that begs a whole conversation on how to do that as an independent, employee or as an entrepreneur. You know, I don't think I'm that much different because me being self-employed, I also have to earn, you know, based on the fees I collect, the commissions that I make, and everything. And since I work for myself, right, I've got to pick what my best retirement plan is going to be, my best health insurance, life insurance, all these different things. So there's a lot of similarities there. But like we are, as a matter of fact, is kind of interesting because you work in an industry that was the most affected industry. I'm on the other side working in an industry which is the least affected. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that every time there's been a crisis, that could be the 2001 terrorist attack, the dot-com bubble crisis, the financial crisis of 2008, and then this pandemic crisis. It seems like when there's a lot of fear and a lot of volatility and a lot of uncertainty, people's listening sharpens, and they're looking for safer places. They're looking for, where can I take this money that I've got and protect it because I don't know what's going to happen. So our industry has benefited when times gotten difficult, tough. And on top of that, with technology now, I don't even really need an office because all my meetings and everything I do is virtually, Zoom. We are basically doing Zooms with people all over the country. But getting back to what you were saying is, if somebody like you who is in an industry that was impacted so much and so many millions of restaurants just going under, never open, have you thought about, did you feel prepared to make a switch? Are you thinking about doing something different, you personally?
Absolutely. I mean, it comes to a point where you have to really be cautious of your money and how you spend it and how you put it to work. How do you prepare yourself? And I think that's the message that we want to send out. Help people prepare themselves to where if something else were to happen, you're not in a situation where you don't know what to do, or you're heavily reliant on somebody acting for you to stay afloat.
Right. You know? Well, that kind of gives me ideas as to, if you were to ask me, you know, what would you tell those people that were affected to better prepare themselves for the next thing is, well, first of all, just look deep inside your talents and your abilities. I'm sure that you can find something that nowadays you can package and offer it out to the world, so that you have this other source of income that you can rely on, and it's not necessarily another job. You know what I mean? Like, there is probably something, and I think we've had a conversation before where you being in the food industry, you can come up with something that you can teach me who is not in that industry that I'm willing to pay for. I don't know what that is because I am not in your industry, but I know in my side, like if my industry was affected, I have a lot of financial knowledge, strategies that add value to people. And the only folks that have gotten access to that information is people that have come to my workshops, like life workshops. And so because of what I've seen happening in other industries, I have now packaged those things in online courses where now I can get away from my 5 to 10 mile radius and I can have these courses online that people are willing to pay for. Even if they're not going to invest their money with me, if I'm not going to manage their wealth, if I'm not going to offer them insurance or anything like that, just the knowledge itself helps somebody and it helps me. And I think that is to be true in any industry unless you think otherwise.
No, it's not that I think otherwise, but I do. My question to you would be, what advice would you give that the average person that is in a situation like mine to better prepare themselves to not be in this, regardless of whether you're going to seek a separate source of income, just to be like, hey, you know what? If something happens, I'll be okay. Where can I put my money and my extra cash and manage it to where this is no longer this?
Well, here's the reality. I mean, obviously, I can. This is probably not a podcast where I'm going to make any open financial recommendation. That's just not what you do. If you want to have some specific steps to take as to where you're going to put your money, the only thing I could probably say is that you need to align the financial strategies and vehicles with your purpose. You are in your most productive stages in life, right? Where you are focusing maybe just on accumulation. Other people that could be listening to this podcast may be on the the next stage in your life, which is distribution, get the money. Now I've saved so much, now I need to make sure that I generate an income. So what I'm trying to get to is that I'm not going to sit here and give you the specific financial advice because it's not the place to do it. You've got to get together with your financial planner, professional advisor, whatever, and work that out. What I would tell you is that why not take a look at the industries that have proven time and time again to be recession-proof, to be pandemic-proof. And I can only speak to the industry that I've grown up in, which is the financial industry. And I repeat again, I'll tell you, every crisis that this country's had, at least since 1999, because that's when I got involved in the industry, one of a pandemic-proof careers is a financial industry. Like in 2008, the auto industry was hit hard, right? Even though it was a financial crisis, people were looking for places to safeguard their money. So they were still looking for advisors. They were still looking for consulting with somebody who knew more about them when it comes to retirement plans. Because that's where people have most of their money. Would you agree? Like in IRAs, 401k, stuff like that. Probably not going to be in the bank, but in retirement account. So people were looking for that. So people that did what I do did really, really well in those times. But on the other side of the token, people that were focused in the mortgage industry in 2008, they went down completely. In the real estate industry, they went down. In most of industries, it went down. So I would look at what were the industries, and you can Google this stuff, you can really search this stuff, it's what industries were the least impacted in all the previous pandemics, as an example. And what industries actually not only did bad, but actually flourished. Because would you agree that there are many different industries and business and types of businesses that actually have grown and done really, really well in this pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know people that are truly thriving right now.
Yeah.
Because of it. Whether it's they starting a business and it's, people are afraid to start a business or start something new because, wow, look at what we're going through. But at the same time, there's people that are like, you know what, I'm still going to continue to do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And they take advantage of low interest rates and, the government seems like it's pretty much giving out money with very low interest so that you can.
Absolutely. Well, the government can stimulate the economy with interest rate and fiscal policy. It's kind of like the two engines of this plane. So they will always work with the fiscal, the tax side of it, and obviously interest rates. But I was thinking that a better answer to the previous question you asked is, what to do. I have more to say. And I can stand here and tell you that it doesn't matter what industry you are in. It doesn't matter what profession you're in. We all need to learn how to sell and how to market. Because in the end, those skills and those abilities can help you make money regardless of what market conditions we're going through. Let me give you an example. If you know how to market and sell, then you can market and sell whatever the market needs at that time. Because the market's always going to need some sort of a product, a solution, to be able to solve whatever problems that they're going through. And I see that there's a lot of resistance from people really, doing that. Like you're in the food industry, you may be thinking, and I'm assuming that I could be completely wrong, you may be thinking, why do I need to sell? Or why do I need to learn how to market? Why do I need to learn that? And then the follow-up question is, would you agree that if you knew how to sell and how to market, you would be able to make money, not just necessarily relying on having to go back to work?
Well, my answer to that is, you might think that my profession, or what we do, doesn't really involve the
selling,
but I would be the first one to tell you that it's the exact opposite. Whether it is you come in and you sit down at a table and you want a nice meal.
Yeah.
Guess what?
A good time.
I'm selling you a good meal and a good time. And that can go for anything. You got to know your product. You got to know the specifics in order to do so.
Yeah.
So if you could do it on something on such a small scale, you could do it in anything else. The same rules apply when it comes to selling and marketing.
Yeah, and you're right. I don't know your industry, but I've gone to have a good dinner, and then if you're a good server, I would say that you would make specific recommendations and in order for me to consume more and have a better experience. But I don't know if even most people knowing that in your industry or any other or any industry that is not, but people don't necessarily consider themselves like that they're in sales, to come out or take those skills that they have and really pick a brand new product or a totally brand new service and say, since I know how to communicate, talk to people and persuade and even get them to close, I don't think that many of them are making the switch to do that, because I would say most people that are in the restaurant industry or these industries that were affected, they didn't necessarily make a complete switch to go out and sell something else. I think the majority of them are basically kind of just holding back and trying for things to come back to normal so they can go back and do the same thing, because any change is obviously painful for anybody. Especially when you've invested 1, 2, 3 decades of doing that one thing, and that's just how you know what to do. But I guess what I'm trying to get people to understand is that to get an epiphany and say, wait a minute, I'm in the food industry. I've already have the people skills. I got some sales skills. So how can I grab those skills and be able to channel that focus into something completely different that is in an industry where it's not going to be affected the next pandemic around or the next crisis, to be able to be ready? Because if you're going to go back to do the exact same thing, let's say everything goes back to some normality and you go back to doing the same exact thing, then you can't blame anybody, because we were there. There was a big wake-up call, and you didn't do something completely different, utilizing the things that you have already acquired as skills, which many people have.
It's important to touch that. I don't think you're trying to persuade anyone to switch anything. It goes down to investing your free time. You can go back. You can go back and do what you were doing, what you known to do, but better management, separate sources of income within your free time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, here's and it's not to get off subject, but here's the reality. Everybody's going to work, and everybody is obviously going to work to not just sustain their lifestyle, but to better their lifestyle. And everybody that is listening to us today, if they could be millionaires, they'd want to be, right? And we're all thinking about that day when we reach retirement. And the typical advice is what? Save 10% of what you make, invest it long term, and maybe you'll retire a millionaire. The reality is that, you know, let's say you make $100,000 a year. Let's say that you can save 10% of that. You know, that's $10,000. How long is it going to take you to save $1 million if you don't, let's say you take out any compound interest or any earnings on investments? I mean, it's going to take you 100 years just to be able to make $1 million, to save $1 million. So you're not going to become financially independent just by saving. Right? You need to invest but what I'm trying to say is that you need to find ways to generate more income and multiple sources of income, but it's not an easy thing to do because at the end of the day, you have just X amount of time and focus you can put into something that is going to be, that has the chance to succeed. And so what I'm really trying to say here, hopefully I'm not mixing too much the message is that there are skills you already have. How can you use that same tool for a complete different project? Have you given it thought to that, and have you even attempt to use that same thing into something that is in an industry that is not at risk of being affected by another pandemic? Because we will have another pandemic. This is not the last one. You go back to, you know, you had the swine, and then you had Zika, and you have Ebola, and you had HIV, and you had SARS, and you had, you know, now the COVID-19. So there's 6 of them that I can think of, and I'm sure there's probably dozens of them, right? And some of them were contained. But, you know, if something like this ever comes again and you're doing the exact same thing, well, let me tell you, you're probably going to see things repeat unless you evolve. And I think that's the opportunity. And the message of the podcast today is, what can I do today with what I already have, which is the biggest investment you've made in your life? Like 20, you mentioned in a previous podcast, you've been close to 20 years now in the industry. There are so many gems and abilities you've learned. And people that are in other industries that were affected, like the airline, they've known some skills. I don't know what they are. I'm just saying you can repurpose that energy, that talent, those abilities into something that is in an industry that is the complete polar opposite when it comes to being affected when a pandemic hits.
Yeah, I mean, it's food for thought, homework for everybody, you know. Instead of waiting for the next pandemic to hit.
Right.
Now is the time to
Now is the time to prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to you know, where to invest and all that, you know, hopefully we'll have other podcasts so we can at least give you, not financial advice per se, but do give you some information, because that's what I've done for, you know, the last 2 decades.
Right. Whether it's information, whether it's a little spark of something that'll motivate the listeners.
Yeah, it's a very regulated industry. So I am a licensed insurance agent. I'm a licensed professional, and you know, when you talk about any strategy or you talk about any products or anything like that, it's like, you know, you've got regulations and regulators in your tail, making sure that, you know, you got to give a disclaimer, and it's hard to do that. But we do have conferences, online conferences, and we have other stuff where people can get that information. And we'll see if we can put that here on the screen. But I also want to take the opportunity to thank one of our sponsors, which is Hegeman Group International, which is the company that is in business to help people like you and I become financial professionals. We just said it. People, when it comes to protecting their money, growing their money, and protecting it from what? Protected from taxation, inflation, volatility, excessive fees, even conflicts of interest, and growing it, then you've got to have the right amount of information. And so Hegemon Group International teaches people how to do that through their network of financial professionals, and they are constantly recruiting people and training them in Mexico, Canada, in the U.S. So if you would like to get those skills that you acquired over the last 10, 15, 20 years that you've been working, and apply those skills in a new industry like the financial industry, because it's been the industry least affected by the pandemic, then this may be an opportunity for you to reinvent yourself, I should say, and do something different. So go to Hegemon Group International. That's HGICrusade.com, HGICrusade.com, and put it right here. Check out their value proposition, and maybe this is the career that you've been looking for to excel and take your income to the next level by helping people solve their most common financial problems. So once again, my friend, thank you for collaborating with me on the podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you
care.
for having me.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance.